I never expected my life to split in two with a single sentence, but the moment my stepsister Liana looked at me and whispered, "If you don't even know who you are, do you?" Something inside me trembled like a thin glass ready to crack. I remember standing frozen in the dim hallway of our house, the smell of lavender drifting from her room, the soft hum of her music vibrating through the walls. I hadn't meant to overhear her. I was just passing by. But that sentence clung to me like a shadow, accusing, knowing, frightening. Maybe it was the way she said it. Calm, almost gentle, but with a confidence that suggested she saw through me. Past the jokes, the shy awkwardness, the quiet compliance I used to survive in a house where I always felt like a guest. She was only a year older, yet somehow she carried herself like someone who had already lived multiple lives. Sharp-eyed, observant, unsettling. I tried to walk away before she noticed I was standing there, but she opened her door before I even reached the stairs. "Wait," she said, in that tone that made stopping feel inevitable. I turned, heart hammering with a nervousness I could never explain. She leaned against her doorframe, wearing an oversized sweater that swallowed her arms. There was something almost theatrical about the way she studied me, quiet, analytical, as if she was reading annotations written around my face. "Come inside for a second," she said. "I want to show you something." I should have refused. I should have said I was busy. But I moved toward her room, as if pulled by an invisible thread. Her space was always warm, with fairy lights tracing the corners and a scent that reminded me of early spring. She closed the door softly, and that sound, click, felt like the beginning of something I wasn't prepared for. She walked to her vanity, opened a drawer, and pulled out a soft pastel scarf. She held it up, letting the fabric float between her fingers. It shimmered faintly under the lights. "Try this," she said. I blinked. "What? Why?" "Because I want to see something," she replied simply, stepping closer. "Don't worry. It's harmless." My first instinct was confusion, then embarrassment, then something else, something I buried instantly. I raised my hands to take the scarf, but she wrapped it around my neck before I could react, her fingers grazing my skin. The touch wasn't intimate, but it was intentional, precise. She stepped back, studying me again. "There," she murmured. "See." I swallowed. My voice cracked a little. "See what?" Her eyes softened, but they carried a strange certainty. "The way your shoulders drop. The way your breathing changes. You don't even realize you relax when you're wearing something soft." I felt heat rush into my face. She was wrong. She had to be wrong. Yet her words sank deep, finding a place inside me that I didn't know existed. She motioned toward her mirror. "Look." I hesitated, but eventually lifted my gaze. I expected to see myself, awkward, unsure, out of place. But what I saw was slightly different. Subtle, but undeniable. My expression wasn't tense for once. My posture wasn't defensive. My eyes looked almost peaceful. A strange coldness washed over me as the thought crept in. Why does this feel right? Liana walked behind me, her reflection appearing beside mine. "There's nothing wrong with softness," she said quietly. "You've been afraid of it your whole life." I opened my mouth to protest, but no words came out. That terrified me even more. She moved around to face me again. "I think you've been carrying secrets you don't know how to name," she said. "Let me help you understand them." My pulse jumped. "Help me how?" She smiled, soft, not mocking, but with a tilt that suggested she knew far more than she was letting on. "Little steps," she replied. "If you trust me." I didn't know why, but I nodded. Her smile deepened, and she turned to her closet. When she opened the door, a wave of colors, textures, and fabrics spilled into view. She didn't pull out anything outrageous, just a simple pale pink cardigan, delicate and light. "Start with this," she said. I froze. "Liana, I don't." "It's just fabric," she murmured. "But it might help you discover something you've been avoiding." The air felt heavier. My hands shook slightly. It wasn't the garment that frightened me. It was the possibility that she was right. That she had seen something in me before I dared to see it myself. She stepped closer again, her tone gentler than ever. "I'm not trying to embarrass you," she said. "I'm trying to understand you. And maybe help you understand yourself." Something in her voice made my resistance crumble. I reached out, slowly, trembling, and took the cardigan. The moment my fingers brushed the fabric, I felt an emotion I didn't have a name for. A longing? A recognition? A fear? Maybe all three tangled together. I slipped the cardigan on. It was soft against my skin, too soft, almost overwhelming in how comforting it felt. I expected to laugh or cringe or pull it off immediately. But instead, a warmth spread through my chest, gentle, quiet, terrifying in its familiarity. Liana watched silently, arms folded, expression unreadable. Then she whispered, almost triumphantly, "I knew it." My breath hitched. "Knew what?" "That this wasn't the beginning," she said. "It's the moment you finally stopped running." Her words should have made no sense, but somehow they made too much. And that was the moment, standing in my stepsister's room wearing her cardigan, feeling my identity wobble beneath my feet, when everything in my life quietly shifted. A shift no one in the house could see yet. But Liana did. She always did. That night, I lay awake longer than I'd ever admit to anyone. The cardigan was folded neatly beside my pillow, but its softness lingered on my skin like a memory I couldn't wash off. I kept replaying everything. Liana's steady gaze, her quiet confidence, the way she said I'd stopped running. Running from what, though? From her? From myself? From some truth I'd never dared to name? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw myself in her mirror. Not the version I'd spent years crafting, but the one that slipped out when I wasn't guarded. Softer. Lighter. Almost relieved. And that frightened me more than anything else. The next morning, I tried to pretend nothing had happened. I ate breakfast silently, nodded along to whatever conversation floated through the room, and kept my eyes fixed on my plate. But I could feel Liana's gaze now and then, curious, patient, not intrusive but expectant, as though she knew a secret I hadn't consciously agreed to share. I avoided her the rest of the day. At least I tried. By afternoon, I heard a soft knock on my door. I hesitated, pretending I was busy, but the knock came again, gentler this time, almost apologetic. "Can I come in?" she asked. There was no judgment in her voice, just calm intention. I swallowed hard. "Yeah." She slipped inside and closed the door behind her. But she didn't move closer. She kept a respectful distance, giving me space to breathe. "I'm not here to push you," she said quietly. "But I can tell you're thinking about last night." I crossed my arms, unsure how to respond. "It was just a cardigan," I muttered. She smiled faintly, not because she was amused, but because she recognized the denial. "Sure. And yet here you are acting like you accidentally uncovered a hidden map to another life." I turned away, but she stepped closer, not invading, but anchoring herself just near enough that I couldn't retreat into my thoughts completely. "You're scared of what you felt," she said. Her words hit deeper than she realized. "I didn't feel anything," I lied. "You felt ease," she said, choosing the word like it mattered. "The kind you don't allow yourself." My throat tightened. I didn't understand why her words could break me open like this. Why was it that she could see more of me than I ever wanted exposed? She sat on the edge of my bed and looked around the room. Bare walls, plain clothes, everything neutral and quiet, as if I'd spent years trying to erase any sign of personality. "This room doesn't match you," she said softly. My eyebrows knitted. "What does that mean?" "It means you've been trying to be invisible," she replied. "Trying so hard to fit what you think everyone expects that you stop looking at who you might actually be." I felt my heartbeat in my ears. "And you think you know who that is?" "No," she said. "But I think you want to know, even if it scares you." She paused. Then, cautiously, she reached into her tote bag and pulled out something small and folded. She held it gently, as though she was offering a fragile truth. "Before you freak out," she said, "this is not what you think. It's not a costume, not a joke, not anything dramatic. Just a fabric test." I frowned. "A what?" She unfolded it, revealing a soft, pale blue shawl, light, airy, barely there fabric. She placed it between us like a bridge neither of us had crossed yet.
"Just hold it," she said.
That's all. I stared at the shawl as though it might reveal something about me I wasn't prepared for. Liana didn't force it into my hands. She waited, patient, unrushed. Something inside me tugged again. Not curiosity, but a kind of longing I didn't want to acknowledge. My fingers brushed the edge of the shawl, and the sensation was immediate, gentle in a way that felt strangely grounding. I let my hand rest on it. Warmth bloomed through me. Not excitement, not embarrassment, just stillness. A sense of being seen without being exposed. Like the fabric was quietly telling me I didn't need to be rigid all the time. Liana watched, but her gaze wasn't sharp this time. It was soft, encouraging. "Does it feel strange?" she asked. I shook my head before I even realized I was doing it.
"No."
It feels, I struggled to articulate the feeling. Familiar? I don't know why. She nodded as though she'd expected that answer. "You don't have to understand it right now," she said. "Just don't run from it." The words settled into my chest like a weight and a comfort at the same time. She stood slowly and headed for the door. Before leaving, she turned back. "I'm here," she said. "Not to force anything. Just to help you listen to the parts of yourself you've been ignoring." And then she walked out, leaving the pale blue shawl beside me like a question I wasn't ready to answer, but couldn't avoid anymore. I sat there for a long time, letting the fabric slip between my fingers, feeling a quiet truth stirring beneath every breath. Something was changing inside me. Something I wasn't sure I could stop. The shawl stayed with me longer than I expected. At first, I kept it folded at the corner of my desk, pretending it was nothing more than borrowed fabric I didn't know where to return. But every time I walked past it, my fingers would brush the edge almost involuntarily, drawn to its softness like a whisper reminding me of something unfinished. By the third evening, I caught myself draping it over my shoulders without even thinking about it. I froze the moment I realized what I'd done, but the stillness that came with the fabric settling against my skin held me in place. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't transformative. It was quiet, like breathing differently without noticing until the air feels new. That's when the door opened. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Liana stood in the doorway, blinking in surprise, not at the shawl, but at the fact that I looked startled for being caught wearing it. "Oh," she said softly. "You tried it." I wanted to snatch it off immediately, hide it, deny it, joke it away, anything to escape the vulnerability crackling in the air. But something in her expression stopped me. She wasn't judging. She wasn't even smirking like she sometimes did when she teased me. She looked proud and relieved. I swallowed. It's not what it looks like. I was just. "You don't have to explain," she said gently. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The room suddenly felt smaller, not in a suffocating way, but in a way that made the truth feel closer than I wanted it to be. "You're allowed to like softness," she said. "You're allowed to feel comfortable in things you never thought were meant for you."
Her voice was calm.
So calm that my denial started to crumble before it even formed. She approached slowly, stopping a few steps away from me. "How does it feel?" I hesitated, every instinct screaming to shrug and pretend it didn't matter. But the shawl spoke louder than my fear. I took a shaky breath. "Right," I said before I could stop myself. "But weird. And confusing." She nodded slowly. "Confusing doesn't mean wrong." I sat on the edge of my bed, fingers gripping the loose fabric. "I don't know what's happening to me." She sat across from me, her posture gentle, open. "You're listening to yourself. Maybe for the first time." My chest tightened. "But what if I don't like what I hear?" She tilted her head. "Then we figure it out together." The word together hit somewhere deep inside me. I didn't know why it meant so much, but it did. Maybe because I'd never felt like someone wanted to be part of my inner world before, especially not the parts one didn't understand myself. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a simple gold hairpin shaped like a leaf. She placed it in her palm, letting it catch the light. "I want to try something," she said. But only if you trust me.
Trust.
A fragile, delicate word. But I nodded. She moved behind me, her hands ghosting near my hair. I'm not changing you, she said. Just showing you another side of you. The one you keep hiding. I felt the hairpin slide gently into place behind my ear. It was barely noticeable, light, subtle. But the moment it clicked, something inside me shifted again. Not outwardly. Inwardly. Quietly. She stepped back around to face me. Look. I turned toward the mirror. The change was tiny. Almost imperceptible. A small pin catching the light. A soft shawl draped over shoulders that didn't seem quite as tense. But it wasn't the appearance that made my breath catch. It was the expression in my eyes. Like I was seeing someone who had been waiting to surface for a long time. Someone softer. Someone gentler. Someone I didn't recognize but wasn't afraid of. I stared for longer than I meant to. Liana watched me carefully. What do you see? I shook my head, voice barely a whisper. I don't know. Do you want to know? She asked. My throat tightened.
Yes.
But I'm scared. Her eyes softened. Being scared means you care. It means you're stepping into something real. I didn't say anything.
Couldn't.
The weight of the moment was too big to put into words. Then she said something that wrapped around me, like the shawl itself. You don't have to be who you were taught to be. My breath hitched, because some part of me had always known that truth, but hearing it out loud made it real. Frighteningly real. She stood up and offered her hand. Not in a commanding way, but in a quiet invitation. Come to my room, she said. There's something I want to show you. My pulse quickened. I didn't know what she had planned. I didn't know if I was ready. But curiosity pulled me forward stronger than fear. I took her hand. Her fingers wrapped gently around mine, and for the first time, the path ahead didn't feel like a trap or a test. It felt like the beginning of understanding myself, even if I had no idea where it would lead. Walking down the hallway with Liana felt like moving through a dream I couldn't wake from. Her hand around mine wasn't firm, just steady enough to keep me from drifting back into my own fear. My steps were slow, cautious. Every shift of the shawl on my shoulders felt like a reminder that I was crossing some invisible threshold I could never uncross. When we reached her room, she didn't rush inside. She turned the doorknob gently, like she was opening a moment she'd been preparing for days. Before we go in, she said quietly, I want you to breathe. I exhaled shakily. Why? Because whatever you feel in there, I want you to feel it without panicking. Her tone wasn't dramatic, but something inside me recognized the gravity. She pushed the door open, and warm light spilled out, soft golden fairy lights, her familiar lavender scent, the faint hum of music playing low enough to be felt more than heard. But the thing that stood out wasn't any of that. It was her vanity table. She had set it up differently, like she'd been waiting for me. A small stool pulled out, a mirror angled softly, a few items laid out neatly, a gentle brush, a pale peach lip balm, a silk ribbon, nothing intimidating or extreme. Everything delicate, everything soft, everything safe. My breath caught. Liana, I whispered. What is all this? She stepped inside first, guiding me with a tilt of her head. This is an exploration, she said calmly. Not a transformation. Not a makeover. Just a moment with yourself. I hovered near the doorway, torn between stepping back and stepping forward. I don't want to become someone I'm not. She turned to me, her expression earnest and unwavering. I'm not asking you to become someone. I'm asking you to meet someone. The words hit with the weight of a truth I'd been dodging for years. She approached me slowly, making sure she didn't push. Sit with me, she said, motioning to the stool. You won't be alone. I didn't move at first. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, each beat asking 100 unspoken questions. Who was I becoming? Why did this feel so important? Why did I feel like I was standing on the edge of something that would change me forever? In the silence, she whispered, you can leave if you want. That was what made me stay.
Because she wasn't trapping me.
She was offering something, guidance, understanding, a space I never had before. I stepped forward and sat. The stool felt small beneath me, grounding and unsteady at the same time. Liana stood behind me, her reflection appearing beside mine in the mirror. She didn't reach for anything yet. She just studied my face, carefully, respectfully. "Can I brush your hair?" she asked softly. No one had ever asked me something like that. Not as a joke, not as a dare, not as an intrusion. As a gentle request. "Yes," I whispered before fear could stop me. Her fingers ran through my hair first, testing the tangles, learning its texture. Then she picked up the brush, the soft bristled kind surgeons would use if they wanted to avoid bruising a flower. She brushed slowly, gently, as if she knew I might break if she moved too fast. The first stroke sent a wave of warmth down my spine. The second released tension I didn't realize I'd been holding. By the fourth, something in my chest loosened, like a knot that had been there for years finally allowed itself to unravel. "You hold so much inside," she murmured. "I can feel it." I blinked hard, struggling to keep my composure. "I don't mean to." "I know," she said. "You learned to be small because you thought it was safer." Her reflection met mine in the mirror. "But you don't have to be small here." The brush continued its soft, rhythmic path through my hair, and gradually, my shoulders dropped. My breath deepened. My grip on the shawl loosened. Everything slowed. Then she set the brush down gently and picked up the silk ribbon. A soft beige color, simple, elegant. "I'm going to tie a small piece of your hair back," she said.
Subtle.
Almost invisible. Just enough for you to see the version of you that doesn't apologize for existing. My chest tightened. "Why are you doing all this for me?" She paused, her hands still. "Because I see someone who has been waiting to be understood." She tied the ribbon carefully, not high, not childish, not theatrical. Just a small, neat piece that framed my face differently.
Softer. Calmer.
A version of me that didn't look lost but searching. When she stepped back, she nodded toward the mirror. "Look." I lifted my gaze slowly. For the second time in days, I saw someone unfamiliar. But this time, the unfamiliarity didn't frighten me. It moved me. The ribbon was barely noticeable, but its effect was profound. My features seemed gentler. My expression more open. My eyes different. Like they recognized something even if I couldn't name it. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Liana exhaled softly, stepping beside me. "This is not an end," she said. "This is a beginning. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Not even me." The emotions swelled too fast, too sudden, and I felt my throat tighten again. "Liana, is this wrong?" She placed a hand on my shoulder. Warm, steady, grounding. "No," she said quietly. "It's honest." I stared at the reflection, this softer, tentative version of myself, and felt something unspoken shift inside me. Not a conclusion, but an opening. A door I could no longer pretend wasn't there. And, for the first time in my life, I wanted to step through. I didn't fully understand what changed in me that night, but something quiet and irreversible settled beneath my skin. After leaving Liana's room, I walked back down the hallway feeling like every step echoed with a newer version of myself, one I couldn't hide from anymore. Back in my room, I stared at my reflection again, ribbons still nestled in my hair. It was such a small detail, barely visible unless the light hit it just right, but it carried the weight of a truth I had never let myself imagine. I traced the edge of the shawl over my shoulder and tried to calm the rush of emotions swirling inside me. I didn't feel dramatic. I didn't feel transformed. I felt noticed. By her. And by myself. It was the first time in my life that looking in the mirror didn't feel like staring at a stranger trying too hard to be someone he wasn't. But it also scared me. I removed the ribbon slowly and held it in my palm, staring at it like a fragile secret. I wasn't ready to keep it in plain sight, so I tucked it inside my drawer, folded carefully between the pages of an old notebook as though it needed protection from the world. Sleep came in restless waves. My mind replayed every moment. Her voice, her reassurance, the softness of the brush, the gentleness of her hands. None of it felt like control or pressure. It felt like guidance, steadying me as I stepped into a part of myself that had always lived in the dark. By morning, I expected everything to return to normal. I expected to wake up embarrassed, to pull away from whatever path I'd stepped onto. But the shawl was still there, and its presence was less frightening than the silence that settled over the rest of the house. Liana didn't knock on my door, didn't text me, didn't call my name from down the hallway. She gave me space, and somehow, that made me feel her presence more intensely than if she'd confronted me directly. The quiet wasn't cold. It was intentional, an invitation for me to take a step on my own terms. By midday, I found myself drifting toward her room, not because she called me, but because the stillness was too loud. My heartbeat seemed to echo against the walls as I raised my hand to knock. I hadn't even touched the door when I heard her say, "Come in." I froze. "How did you?" "I heard you breathing outside," she said calmly. "You breathe differently when you're nervous." Embarrassment flushed through me, but when I walked in, her expression softened into something reassuring. She was sitting on her bed with a book in her lap, legs tucked underneath her comfortably. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, though it wasn't entirely true. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do next." She closed her book and placed it aside. "You don't have to do anything next. You're allowed to sit with what you're feeling." I sank into the chair near her desk, curling my fingers around the armrests as if they could anchor me. "I feel split," I admitted quietly. "Like there are two people inside me, and one of them is waking up." She didn't laugh,
Didn't dismiss it.
She leaned forward slightly, hands clasped. "And how does that feel?" I swallowed hard. Scary, but calm. Like I'm finally acknowledging something I've ignored for too long. She nodded slowly, as though she recognized every word. "Most people go through life never meeting their true selves. You're brave for even trying." The word brave didn't fit how I felt. I felt fragile, unsteady, unsure. But hearing her say it made something inside me loosen. "Can I ask you something?" she said gently. I nodded. "When you looked in the mirror last night, what scared you more? What you saw? Or how much you like seeing it?" Her words hit like a quiet earthquake. Every barrier I'd tried to build in my mind cracked under the honesty of that question. My voice was thin when I whispered, "How much I liked it." She exhaled softly, not with victory, but with understanding. She moved to sit on the floor across from me, folding her legs and resting her arms on her knees. "You're not alone," she said. "You're not strange. You're not doing anything wrong. You're exploring a softer side of yourself that's been silenced for too long." My eyes burned unexpectedly, not from sadness, but from the intensity of being understood. Truly understood. Liana looked at me thoughtfully, considering her next words. "I want to show you something," she said. "Something small. Something honest." She reached under her bed and pulled out a simple wooden box, sliding it open slowly. Inside were delicate fabrics, pastels, neutrals, soft patterns, and accessories that looked carefully kept. A collection that wasn't about glamour but expression. "These were mine from years ago," she said quietly. "I've kept them because they taught me about myself when I felt lost." She held up a small, soft cream-colored scarf. "This one was special to me. Not because it was pretty, but because it made me feel like I was finally seeing the version of myself I wanted to become." She stood and held it out to me, not pushing, not insisting, simply offering. "You don't have to wear it," she said. "Just hold it and see how it feels." I reached out with trembling fingers. The fabric brushed against my skin, lighter than a whisper, warmer than I expected. It felt like stepping into sunlight after years in the shade. My chest tightened with an emotion I couldn't name. Liana watched me carefully. "What does it feel like?" My voice cracked as I answered. "It feels like me." Her eyes softened with a quiet, proud warmth. "Then you're closer to understanding yourself than you think." I clutched the scarf gently, realizing with a startling clarity that this wasn't a phase or a moment or a strange coincidence. It was the beginning of a truth years in the making. And I wasn't sure where it would take me yet, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid to find out. The night she took away my last excuse. I didn't hear her footsteps when she entered my room. I only realized she was there when the faint click of the door's latch made the air tighten around me. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at my hands, still shaking from everything she had coaxed me through earlier that day. Still hiding from yourself? Her voice floated closer, soft but heavy with meaning. I didn't dare look up. Not at my stepsister. Not at the girl who somehow saw every truth I was too afraid to speak. She sat beside me, without asking. The mattress dipped, and with it, something inside me seemed to tilt too. "You know," she said slowly, "I used to think you hated this. All the clothes, the makeup, the training." She tapped her fingernail lightly on my knee. "But now I'm starting to realize you only hate how much you want it." My throat tightened. She wasn't wrong. And that terrified me more than anything she'd made me wear. "I don't want." "Yes, you do." No hesitation. No warmth. Just absolute certainty, like she held a mirror to my thoughts and watched the words form before I could. She stood up and walked toward my closet, the one she had slowly been filling with things that didn't belong to the boy I thought I was. Dresses in quiet pastels, soft sweaters, hair ribbons, stockings folded with ridiculous precision. Every hanger felt like a confession I never made. She paused, fingers gliding along the fabric. "You keep telling me you're confused," she said, "but your choices keep telling me you're lying." She pulled out the piece that ended me. A simple, delicate dress she had chosen days ago, pale lavender with a shape too gentle to deny. Nothing loud or dramatic, just undeniably feminine. The kind of softness I never let myself imagine wearing. She held it up, letting it sway in her hands. The room seemed to shrink around it. I stood frozen. She watched me the way one studies a fragile secret about to crack. "You kept this," she said. "Folded it, smoothed it, hid it behind your hoodies, as if you were protecting it." Her eyes met mine. No judgment, just truth. "So tell me, why would you protect something you're supposedly afraid of?" My voice came out thin. "I don't know." "Yes," she whispered, stepping closer. "You do." Her fingers brushed my cheek, lifting my gaze until I couldn't run from her eyes. "You've been waiting your whole life for someone to tell you it's okay to be soft," she murmured. "And you hate that it had to be me." The words hit harder than anything she'd said before. Because they were real. Because she wasn't teasing. She wasn't manipulating.
Not now.
She was exposing a truth I'd buried deep enough to convince even myself. My stepsister placed the dress in my hands. "Put it on," she said gently. "Not because I told you to, but because you finally want to know who you could be if you stopped fighting yourself." My arms trembled as I clutched the fabric. She stepped back, waiting. Not demanding, not forcing, just watching. And in that stillness, the last excuse I had left, the last fragile barrier protecting the identity I thought I needed, cracked softly, quietly, like thin ice under a warm hand. I stood up. And this time, I didn't hesitate. I didn't realize how long I'd been standing in front of the mirror. The lavender dress clung softly against me, shaping itself around a version of me I wasn't ready to admit existed. My hands hovered in the air, unsure where to rest, unsure what to hide. She stepped behind me so quietly that I only noticed when her reflection appeared over my shoulder. Calm, observant, almost clinical. "You're breathing too fast," she said. I hadn't noticed, but now I saw it, my chest rising in small, anxious bursts, my shoulders trembling even though the room was warm. The words wouldn't form. She reached out and rested her hands gently on my shoulders, not pushing, not controlling, just grounding me back into the moment. "Look at your face," she whispered. I did. Slowly, reluctantly. My reflection wasn't some exaggerated caricature of femininity. It wasn't even a transformation that demanded attention. It was subtle,
Soft.
almost shy, and yet it shifted everything. I saw the fear in my eyes, the fear of wanting this. I saw the quiet longing I'd never admitted out loud. I saw a softness that had always lived underneath the versions of myself I performed for everyone else. My stepsister's reflection leaned in a little closer, her voice low.
That look right there, she said.
That's the one you've been hiding from everyone. I swallowed. It doesn't look like me. She shook her head. It looks exactly like you. That's why you're scared. Her words landed somewhere deep, somewhere I had never let anyone reach. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence wasn't awkward. It was revealing. Then she lifted a hand and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, and something changed in her expression. Something subtle, but unmistakable. Her eyes softened in a way I'd never seen before, not amused, not teasing, not superior. More like she was seeing me for the first time, too. Do you know what I see now? She asked. I barely breathed. What? She held my gaze in the mirror, steady, unwavering. I see someone who isn't pretending anymore. The words hit me harder than any command she'd ever given. I felt the sting behind my eyes before I could stop it. Not sadness, not fear, just an overwhelming release of something I'd held back for too long. My voice cracked. I don't know who I am. She stepped beside me, closer than before, her shoulder brushing mine. That's the point of this, she said. Not to make you into something else, but to let you become everything you were too afraid to explore. My hands tightened around the sides of the dress. It's happening too fast. She shook her head gently. No, she whispered. This is just the first time you're not running. Her fingers lifted my chin again, steady and warm. Tell me, she said, her voice barely above a breath. What scares you more? The fact that you're changing, or the fact that you like who you're becoming? My heart stuttered. She waited. And that was when I saw her eyes change, not with cruelty or triumph, but with something dangerously close to pride. Pride in me. Pride in who I was becoming. Pride in the courage she believed I had even when I didn't feel it. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She didn't need me to answer. I know, she said softly. And for the first time, I let myself believe she did. Becoming hers completely. I didn't recognize the sound of my own footsteps as I walked down the hallway toward her room. Each step felt heavier, yet lighter at the same time. Heavier because every fiber of my being whispered doubt. Lighter because every soft sway of the dress against my legs reminded me that I was alive in a way I'd never allowed myself to be. The door was slightly ajar, and I paused, heart hammering. She looked up from her desk, eyes lifting to meet mine. That same calm, knowing gaze that had haunted, guided, and now welcomed me. Come in, she said, voice soft but firm. I stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of lavender and vanilla, warm light spilling from the string of fairy lights she always had in the corners. She had prepared something. I could feel it before I saw it. A small tray on the desk held neatly arranged accessories, ribbons, bracelets, small mirrors. Everything gentle. Everything chosen. Everything meant for me. I froze. She smiled, slowly, knowingly. You've come far, haven't you? I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. I nodded instead. She rose from her chair and walked behind me, her fingers brushing my shoulders lightly. Do you trust me? I swallowed. I think so. That's enough. She didn't hesitate. She lifted a delicate hairband, soft, pale pink, with a tiny bow at the side, and guided my hands to place it in my hair. My fingers trembled. When it clicked into place, the subtle change in my reflection made me shiver. I was softer. My face seemed lighter. My posture less tense. She stepped back, studying me. Do you feel it? I think so. My voice was barely audible.
Good.
She walked around to the front and gestured toward the mirror. Look. Really look. I raised my eyes and caught my reflection. It wasn't an illusion. It wasn't a costume. It wasn't her creating me. It was me. The me I had hidden, denied, run from, and yet now stood fully exposed to myself. I saw my own face, delicate, tentative, alive. My chest tightened. I felt fear, yes, but also something deeper. Something pure. Acceptance. She came closer again. Do you know what this is? I shook my head. This is you. Without shame, without pretense, without pretending you're someone you're not. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. And the most important part? You chose to be here. You chose to see yourself. The tears I hadn't allowed myself to shed all week came unbidden. I tried to blink them away, but she reached out and held my hand. It's okay, she whispered.
Cry. Feel. Be.
All of it. I did. For the first time, I let myself feel everything. Relief, fear, excitement, confusion, and the unexplainable thrill of being truly seen. She didn't flinch, didn't recoil, didn't mock. She simply held me steady as I unraveled quietly, completely, finally. When I pulled myself together, I realized something I had feared yet hoped for. I no longer wanted to hide. I no longer wanted to retreat. I wanted to explore this new me. She guided me to the little stool by the desk and gestured toward the accessories laid out.
Choose, she said.
Choose everything you want. There's no wrong answer. I picked up the softest ribbon, then a bracelet, then the tiniest, gentlest earrings. She watched patiently, nodding, never rushing, letting me feel each choice, each layer of myself settling into place. By the time I looked up again, she had a small, quiet smile on her face, one I would remember forever. You've done beautifully, she said. You've become yourself. And you've allowed me to help you see it. I swallowed hard. I feel like I belong here. Yes, she said softly. You do. And you belong in yourself. I took a deep breath and looked at the mirror once more. The person staring back at me was no longer uncertain, no longer hiding. I saw softness and courage intertwined. I saw someone who could be gentle and strong at the same time. I saw someone who had survived years of confusion and fear, and finally claimed the right to exist as they truly were. She reached out, lightly brushing my hair, and whispered, You don't need to hide from me anymore. Or from anyone. This is yours. I nodded. The warmth in my chest was overwhelming, spreading from my shoulders down to my fingertips. For the first time, I realized I hadn't just worn her clothes. I hadn't just followed her guidance. I hadn't just played at femininity. I had stepped into a truth I had always avoided, a self I had never allowed to breathe. And I had survived. Thrived. I had become hers, yes, in the quiet, unspoken way she had led me. But more importantly, I had become myself, fully, completely, undeniably. I smiled at my reflection, and in that smile I saw freedom. Not from her, not from the rules. Freedom from hiding. I turned to her. Thank you. She nodded, her smile soft and steady.
No.
Thank you for trusting yourself. And in that moment, I understood everything. The past, the fear, the shame, the secrecy. They were gone. All that remained was me.